Welcome back to another episode of the Hustle Nation podcast. Today, we've got a real treat. Mr. Chris Walker is in the house. You've probably seen him in your newsfeed if you're into marketing like I am. He is the CEO at Passetto and Chairman at Redefine Labs, and he is an absolute marketing wizard. Chris, welcome to the show.
Y'all, thanks for having me on the show. Looking forward to be here. I've done 2 live events just now, back to back, and now I'm coming onto this one, so I feel a lot of energy. I feel fired up. Ready to get into the details.
I feel like I wish that's what everyone said when they jumped onto the studio with us. All right, Chris. So what we like to kick off the show is by asking our guests a little bit about their journey and how they got to where they are now.
Cool. How long we got? You want me to just give you the overview, or you want me to go deep?
Whatever you want. The ball's in your court.
Cool. So I worked in B2B companies as in a ton of different variety of roles for the first 7 years of my career: engineering, product management, operations, supply chain, marketing, downstream into demand gen, product marketing, field marketing. Like back in that time, they didn't even really distinguish those. You just did marketing. Then you had to do field and product and demand gen. You did all of them. Now in tech, there's a lot of specialization, but back then you were just doing marketing. And so those were great foundational learnings for me for the first 7 years of my career. Simultaneously to that, I had entrepreneurial tendencies. So I started 2 e-commerce companies in my bedroom as a side hustle, one in 2012, 2013, selling electronics via, Shopify and Amazon FBA long before it was popular. So started to figure out how to run Facebook ads to sell stuff. When you selling a $60 speaker and you are going to spend $20, $30 to acquire the customer, and the cost of goods sold was this much, and it's cost you this much to ship, are you making any money? And so Facebook ads and Amazon search ads was something that I learned a lot in 2012, 2013. I started another, and then I learned a very valuable lesson as an early entrepreneur, 23 years old at that point, where that business was rolling. I think it was on track to do $400,000 in revenue, 50% more or less gross margin as a side hustle to the income that I was making in my job. I made a couple of bad decisions related to cash flow, couldn't make an inventory buy. It's not like the whole thing blew up and I lost a ton of money, but the company went out of business because I couldn't make a big inventory buy. I didn't manage cash flow properly. Fast forward a couple more years, I did another one. It was like textiles and blankets coming in, so I was focused on like that. That was still an FBA play, but a lot of that was more, okay, I'm done paying 20% VIG to Amazon and all the search ad fees. I'm going to try and figure out how to go direct to the consumer. Spent a lot of time running Instagram ads, figured out how to get Instagram organic content to figure out how to do that. It never showed up in attribution, but I would know that when I posted on Saturday, and then the next consecutive 3 hours, we would get the most orders that we got all week, that the organic, and then you could match up the names of the people that bought the stuff to the people that were commenting on the Instagram post, that you could see very clearly that the Instagram stuff was what was actually driving the business revenue, but none of the analytics were saying that. And so that was another core insight for me. And then I started my first company in 2019, Redefine Labs, B2B demand gen agency. We think we're the best at it. We also think that we think a lot differently about how companies do that. We popularized a key change in B2B marketing, moving from lead generation model, where all marketing does is spit out cheap $50 leads that don't buy, to SDRs and sales to follow up with, and instead is focusing on how do we get our target accounts to want to buy our stuff, so that they come inbound and actually want to talk to our sales team and are interested in learning and actually convert and buy stuff. That was a fundamental shift. Most people see that as commonplace now in 2024. But when I was talking about that in 2019, I faced tons of resistance against that model. And then during that period of time, we've been tinkering and identifying customer problems inside of the market, and core customer problem in large developed B2B companies that deploy $50, $100 million or more on sales and marketing every year is that they do not have the data to make fast, easy, obvious decisions and get people aligned in their company. And so my new company, Passetto, is a software company focused on solving that core challenge of data integrity, and then how we actually analyze that data to make strategic decisions across the entire go-to-market team. And that's been more or less my evolution so far. I remain a majority shareholder in my first company, Redefine Labs. I promoted my business partner, Megan Bowen, who's an incredible leader and is going to do an incredible job there, to CEO of Redefine Labs. And I now get involved with some of the some other companies that I'm an investor or a limited partner in. One of the companies called Hatch. They make all of the dark social content that I produce for podcasts and for YouTube long form and YouTube shorts and TikTok and LinkedIn video and things like that. And I just truly believe in that model and the way that they deliver. So I'm, an investor and limited partner in that company, and interested in making other investments to parallel organizations, technology, or managed services that run cash flow positive, and basically fill a gap that I know a lot of my audience in the B2B marketing and go-to-market space need. So that is my short answer about what I'm up to, and I'm sure we're going to get into more details on the journey.
So let's go back, a little bit as you talk about those first businesses, some of the learnings that you had. It would have been really easy, I think, in some of those entrepreneurial starts where you could have just gave up and said, I'm not going to go out on my own again, right? I'm going to have the safety and security of my own job. As you were starting Refine, what really drove that? Because that was seemingly a bigger move after coming off, very different types of businesses. So what kind of drove getting into Refine?
I got pushed into it. The company that I worked for asked me to resign in January of 2019. I sold my car and cut all of my expenses and moved in with a roommate where I paid $800 a month. And I started that company in my living room. Couldn't even afford a $200 desk at WeWork at that point. And I started the company on a $100 an hour client. Shout out MJ Smith, formerly MJ Peters, MJ Smith, who was the first customer to believe in me in that case. And within a month was able to replace my income as what I was making as an employee leading marketing at a startup. And they did, a pretty decent run without employees, probably 6 months without employees, just doing it all myself. And then was able to, through my expansion of thinking, I think at the beginning when I started my company, I thought that making $1 million a year would have been like this grand thing, and I would ride off into the sunset and that would be it. And then you can figure out how to get to $1 million a year, which is $83,000 a month. And you can recognize, wow, I can do that. I did that. Let's go for 20 now. Let's go for 100 now. And you get a different once you get that first insight as an entrepreneur of, hey, I can do this, then if you allow it to happen, you expand your thinking, start thinking bigger, which creates bigger actions, different strategies. It's a whole different game if you're trying to build a $20 million business versus a $1 million business. And so you make different choices, you do different things, you invest differently, you hire differently. If you're trying to get to 1 million, maybe you just cold call and cold email. If you're trying to get to 20 million, you build a major brand on social. And so you just have different strategies around that. So that was one of the core learnings in 2019 for me, even before people knew me on LinkedIn. At that point, I had 3,000 followers on LinkedIn. Nobody listened. I didn't even have a podcast. It was more about being able to think differently about what I was doing. I think that was one of the biggest breakthroughs for me as an entrepreneur ever.
So what was that like the minute you started adding people? So one of the things we see with a lot of entrepreneurs is they get very bought into the way they do things, and to your point, that limits their growth habits. And so as you going from zero to successful in the first 6 months, I imagine as you started to add people, there's always that balance of like, well, are they going to do it the way I've done it or I wanted to do it? How did you get over that hump?
Well, first off, it's very different to try and hire employee number 2 than employee number 50. At that point, we didn't even offer health insurance. So you're looking for a very particular person that is entrepreneurial, that is, flexible and diverse, sort of like a generalist, that's not risk averse. So you're looking for a very specific person at that point who's not going to be a co-founder, who's not going to get a ton of equity, but is interested and has the lifestyle to be able to support that type of move. And so a lot of the people that we hired, employees 1 to 6, like once we got to 10, they moved out. It's like a different style. And so at that point, really I sort of listed off some of the qualities that you're looking for there, but I think like generalist and flexible and entrepreneurial are things that you're looking for in early employees, and trustworthy and reliable, and all the intangibles matter too. But oftentimes employee number 2 is not going to be your number 2 when you're 50 people.
That's a
So
great
I think
point.
I think it's about really recognizing that. And I started that. Nobody else was going to start the company for me because we had no revenue. Right. And I'm doing it another time with the company that I just started. And the reason why founders take a lion's share of the economics is because of year one. It's because the year where I have to pull money out of my portfolio to support working capital in the company, where nobody else wants to do that for themselves, where I have to slog around and do all the hard shit that feels like you're putting in so much effort and you're going nowhere for a long period of time until finally you reach traction, and then people start believing in you, and then people start wanting to working with you. And that's why you own 50, 100% of the company, and the people who start as employee number 8 own 1% or a quarter of a percent, because most people are not willing to go through the beginning of the process about selling your car and walking to where you need to go, or taking public transportation to where you want to go, to take money out of your stock portfolio to fund your software company, to be able to do all those things. That is the really true part of an entrepreneur that I think is very rare. It's easy to come in as employee 10 in a $2 million company in a proven concept and be able to make an impact. And it's not to discredit those people at all. You need those people. Like, I'm not that person. You need those people to build companies. But it's not where you create a majority of the economics, because finding the problem and getting the traction and developing the solution is actually the hardest part from my perspective.
Great
it's the part
perspective.
that many people don't want to do, because it requires going backwards, whether it's in salary, net worth, the things that you own, what people think about you. It requires going backwards.
Great perspective. Chris, when you started your journey as a business owner, entrepreneur in marketing, why did you choose B2B? I've always felt like, and maybe not me so much, but a lot of people in marketing say B2B is so much harder than B2C. What made you decide to go that path?
How do you define harder? Like,
Great question.
If I'm building a business, do I want to build a business in B2C where there are monster agencies and everyone and their mother can run an Instagram ad, and they're going to pay you $1,500 a month to run Instagram ads, when the exact same B2B company would pay you $10,000 a month to do the exact same thing on a different channel? It's the competitive landscape, and it's the size of the problem. Really, that's what it is. B2B companies, at that point, it was clear to me. It wasn't clear to most executives in those companies in 2018, 2017, that marketing was the biggest problem in their company. They thought they needed a sales trainer. They thought they needed a better VP of sales. They thought they needed to hire 10 more SDRs. I worked in the companies. I listened to the conversations. I saw what they were doing. And so I was able to identify a problem that most people didn't identify, which made the decision to focus on B2B very clear to me. And so I think that there's a lesson there about, as you think about the strategy, it's not really about doing what everybody else is doing. It's about understanding your customer and where you can drive the most differentiated value.
So speaking of that differentiated value, where do you find that a lot of businesses get it wrong? And I know the answer is probably it depends, but I see so often it's the positioning, it's pricing, it's creative, it's a lot of different things. What are you seeing in today's world where there's a struggle with B2B marketing, if and when there's a struggle?
I think it depends on the company maturity stage, and at different stages you have very different problems. I think that some things that are consistent across the entire spectrum of company stages is that most companies just aren't connected enough to their customer. I think it's really as simple as that. And that can affect how you build your product, how you do your marketing, where you deploy your investments, how you run your sales process, who you target in your advertising. It impacts everything. The most B2B marketing teams, outside of the few people that sit in product marketing, do not talk to their customers ever. Demand gen people do not talk to, if you're selling FP&A software to a CFO, as a demand gen person, you're not talking to a CFO. You're just trying to hear what product marketing is telling you and then trying to do that. And so I feel like B2B companies often become disconnected with their customer, which impacts their go-to-market and their product strategy. Those issues are very apparent in early stage companies because most people are like, I don't want your product, right? So the disconnection from customers is more easy to pick out in smaller companies because they face friction immediately and they're not quote unquote successful or deemed successful. But if you could go and look at $100 million companies that are seemingly successful that are just as disconnected from their customer, that are building on the wrong roadmap, that are marketing in the wrong channels, that are running a sales process that their customers don't want. And so that's a consistent theme that I see is just not having a laser focus on really understanding and listening to your customer. I feel like people get happy ears. I feel like people try to get they either ask leading questions or they just make assumptions around what they want to hear rather than listening to their customer and hearing what the customer says and then saying, okay, how do I make this true information that my customer just told me? How do I use that to make it work for me? And I think there's a real learning in there. I've always, because like in 2013, I was working for a company and they, I'm 23 years old and they hired me to evaluate and make a business case around a technology they were thinking about investing in. And I'm 23 years old and I'm running the business case and I sit in the executive meeting and I say, based on the data available, we shouldn't build this. We should not spend $1 million to build this product. The market's not big enough. There's more price pressure. There's a lot of competition. We should not build this product. And that was going out and listening to what the market is telling you about willingness to pay, available alternatives, how they're going to handle it, things like that, that lead you to not even create a business that shouldn't be created in the first place. So I think there's a lot of interesting, whenever I've made poor decisions in my career and in my businesses, it's because I haven't been connected enough to my customer. Always.
I love what you said there. And it's so interesting that you said disconnected, which I think is 100% true. But there's a lot of newer, younger companies who fail to ever get connected. And I hearken back to this because if you go to sales is very much a relationship game, especially in the B2B space. And so if you translate that or try to apply that to social media, cultivating engagement leads to relationships over time, hopefully. And if you build those relationships, I think that helps you build some connection. Is that a fair assessment? Fair assumption?
I think that when most people think about the differences between sales and marketing, they kind of get it confused. What people see when they see me do things, they see me as a marketer. I'm out here making content. I'm posting content on social media, which must be a marketing channel. I'm out here doing a webinar. Marketing does webinars. I'm out here selling shit. I wouldn't be doing this stuff if it didn't have a tangible impact. I'm just not being a slimy salesman trying to pitch you on my stuff while I do it. I'm being objective. I'm stating facts. I'm using data, and I'm helping you see the reality of what's happening, which leads you to solutions that I offer or things that most people that listen to my content never pay me a dime. Probably 98% of people that listen to my content will never pay me or my companies at all. And they'll get a ton of value and they'll do something. And the important part is when they do something and it works, then they're going to tell someone to attend my event, listen to my podcast, buy my company or something like that. And that's how that plays out. And so what I'm able to do is be able to produce information that makes sales way easier, that actually allows my customer to independently convince themselves that they want to buy, so that when they're talking to me or my companies, it's more of just an evaluation of how is this going to work? How do I get my team on board? What is the budget thing? What are the nuances of the deal? Which is, as a seller, that's what you want to do. Everyone loves selling for companies where people love your product and want to buy it. And a lot of people are coming and want to talk to you. So I think that the idea of sales is relational. I think the way, and one-to-one, I think the way that you build relationships is very different now. So many people feel like they have a relationship with me. I've never met them in person. I'm walking down the street in Austin. People come up to me. Someone buys me a bottle of wine at dinner. Someone says hello to me when I'm walking down the street, ask me a question. They they come up to me, they feel like they know me, and we've never met before. And so I just feel like there's a different way to scale the impact that makes doing marketing well makes sales a lot fucking easier. I don't know if we're allowed to swear on here, but
No,
yeah.
that's such a big statement there, because I feel you see it in probably every B2B company you start with, right? Where there's the marketing teams over here, the sales teams over here, and they feel like they're almost at odds with each other, when in reality,
siloed.
if it's working correctly, they're both trying to do the same thing. But they come at it from such a, sometimes the sales side looking at it from such a short-term lens of just what's the one-to-one deal, right? And marketing a lot of times is coming from an angle of, well, we just want people to be aware of us. Well, the whole section in between is actually where the magic is made, right? And so I think you're right on when so many people, they have that lens, whether they came from a sales background or a marketing background. Very few tend to see it kind of from both of those coming together.
The magic, and very few people get here, the magic is when you can see the whole field of business. You understand finance, you understand product, you understand sales, you understand marketing, you understand delivering to customers. I'm sure there are other things, legal, I'm sure there are other things, but those are some of the core things that I got. When you can see the whole field, you could be a VP of marketing and still be able to elevate and see the whole field. It dramatically changes the things that you do and how you operate as a counterpart to other executives and leaders inside of the company to get stuff done. You need to be able to understand what it's like to be the head of sales if you're the head of marketing, and vice versa. This is not just a marketing versus sales thing. Like, a lot of sales leaders like to pretend that they know how to do marketing, but have never done it. What's the thing? Like, marketing could never lead our sales team. They've never carried the bag. Well, sales should never lead our marketing team. They've never done fucking marketing before. And so, I think the take home, I don't want to get diverted here from the key message. The take home here is that being able to if you're a VP or you're a functional owner inside of a company, being able to understand and ideally have done in some fashion the other areas of the business and the functions, so you can cross-functionally collaborate and integrate what they're doing into what you're doing, I think is a huge benefit. And I think that we have less. I think that there's a message out here that being a specialist is the way to win these days. That, go all in and be so good at SEO only. And sure, there's a way to win there. But I feel like people demonize being a generalist. Like, I consider myself what else is there to call you? It's a generalist. I know a lot of things about business. I think it's a huge strength. I think a lot of early people in their career are pushed away from that when I think it could be their greatest strength.
That's interesting you say that, because I remember in my early 30s interviewing for a couple of jobs, and I think part of what attracted a specific business to me was the fact that I knew a lot of things. I was very diverse in my business and marketing skill set. But at the same time, this one person said to me, "We don't know what box to put you in." And if I'm being honest, it's not that I had a big ego, but I'm like, bitch, put me in a box. Like, what are you doing? Like, what do you mean put me in a box? And I'm like, isn't there like a marketing job specifically for someone who has a diverse skill set? Isn't there a role for somebody like that? Or if you just want me to do social media, I'm like, I don't want to be put in a box. That sounds fucking terrible.
It's terrible. It's what most companies do too.
So how do you get if you're talking to a sales team or a marketing team or both, as you've gone into businesses, how do you get them to start seeing the side of the other side of the fence?
By looking at data and analyzing it objectively and leveraging the data to understand what's going on in our business, and then making a decision as a team about what we need to do to move the metrics that matter. That's what I've never, for many early years of my career, it was my opinion. I hadn't worked with enough companies. I didn't collect the right data. I didn't have the data. I saw it. I saw patterns. They were anecdotes. At this point, I'm beyond that. At this point, I've seen 500 companies' Salesforce instances. I've looked at 50 companies in the past 6 months about how they deploy tens of millions of dollars in marketing, what channels they go on, what goals they have, how they're measuring the effectiveness of it, what their QBR decks say. I've seen enough stuff to know what's going on now. And the way to do it is a lot of companies use a third party like me to be able to go in and tell them a lot of things that they know already that they can't admit to themselves. It's a lot of what happens. Hey, we've been thinking about doing that for the past 12 months, but when we sliced the data 7 different ways and we couldn't get aligned on what was happening and things like that. And so to me, the underlying issue in many B2B companies the go-to-market teams is that they don't have a foundational set of data that makes easy decisions easy and fast. Instead, easy decisions become hard and slow. And if the people that work in these companies are super smart, right? I work with companies that are 100 million in revenue, have raised a bunch of money from the most esteemed investors out there. They have executives that have been there before and done a bunch of stuff, that they're super smart and talented. And so why are these issues happening? We have all of the right pieces in place. And it's because we don't have the right data to make these types of decisions really simply. Instead, we have the marketing team over there playing with their tools, producing a 120-page QBR deck around what all the great stuff marketing is doing, produced by the people that own the investments and therefore are biased to show the investments are working, not to disprove that they're not working. Mm-hmm. Then you got the SDR manager doing the same thing, and you got the sales leader rolling up from their regional directors and their sales managers what's happening in there. And what do you have? Like 3 different reports from different department leaders that say different things and have conflicting data. How are you going to go the line like that? And that's how most companies run their quarterly business review process at an executive level. Which leads you to not make a lot of changes in your strategy. It leads you to almost like a decision paralysis, almost, where it's just like continue on what we're doing.
That sounds painful.
I think that many people that are executives that are in these roles would view it as painful. I think that there are times where it's not painful, when the wind's at your back in 2021 and everybody's winning and everybody's buying and prices are going up and get 50x revenue valuations. There are times where it's easy. It's easier. It's perceived as not hard, right? And there are times where things are hard. And I think what happens is that good times create bad behaviors. And then when good times change to bad times, those bad behaviors create really bad situations. And, my company hasn't been perfect. My company went through some of those things. And I know almost every other company out there, because I see their business data. I see what's happening. Almost every company has struggled with this. Almost every company had slowed growth in 2023 compared to previous years. And then when that pressure gets put on and it's not so good anymore, that's when you need the data to be able to make decisions. And then companies don't have the data. So it becomes one person's opinion against the other. And it leads to a lot of just stalled out stuff. So I would agree. I think that it is painful for many to get through it. And that's why we see CMOs and head of sales tenures less than 2 years in B2B companies right now. Just basically churn and burn executives. And it's not the executive's fault. It's how the company manages their go-to-market and scrutinizes investments and collects the data to make decisions.
It's an excellent point.
More.
So, Chris, how do you strike that balance between, in the B2B space, there's this always debate of inbound versus outbound?
Personally, I think it's a stupid debate and it's outdated.
Tell us why.
Because most inbound leads aren't actually inbound. It's just a way for marketing to tag their leads. Somebody that downloaded your ebook is not an inbound lead. And what it does is they want to put it into little categories, so we can say, here are all the inbound leads. That's what marketing did. And then here are all the outbound leads. That's what our SDR team or our sales team did. So then we can easily say we spent this much on SDRs and we got this. We spent this much on marketing. We did this. And meanwhile, completely divide the teams and have them compete with one another. It's just an outdated way of looking at it. And if you want to, almost every company will be forced to adopt an integrated go-to-market motion, running hybrid motions. You got events, you have your website, you have sales outreach, you have partner, a hybrid integrated motion. You cannot have these motions competing for credit. You cannot. And the core underlying issue is that companies try to scrutinize their marketing investments against those things, or their sales investments, SDR or partner investments in those things. And the way that they evaluate the investments forces them to look at the data that way, that then forces the teams to be at odds. And so the inbound, outbound view is entirely outdated. It is what I think my one man's perspective and what I've seen in a lot of data is that what matters is buyer signals. What did the buyer do that then indicated that our sales team should do something to them? Even if you have an inbound lead, an SDR still calls them, a salesperson still has to close them. It's not like just because it's an inbound lead that we should give all the credit to marketing. The whole team needs to be working together. And so instead of looking at it in that like very narrow-minded, department-oriented view, why don't we look at it as here are all the things, all the signals that buyers and accounts and buyers in those accounts are sending us. They're submitting demo requests. They're filling out our qualified chat. They are downloading ebooks. They're attending webinars. They're seeing us at trade shows. We're getting account intent data about what accounts are on our website. We're getting intent data fed from G2. User Gems is telling us what our champion moved from one company to another, and we should follow up. Our partners are sending us signals about who's in their pipeline. And we have all of these different signals that then drive what our sales team and our SDR team does. And then we collect the data and we decide as a go-to-market team, what are the best signals? And then you'd see that many of the inbound signals are total garbage. What they chalk up as inbound signals right now are total garbage. And then when you look at the outbound signals, you see that many of the outbound signals are not tracked. And so they don't even know why sales is reaching out to those companies. So it's great that they can comp their SDR for getting a meeting, but they can't make any decisions about what to do next because they don't have the data about what's working or not. And so a commitment to looking at it as an integrated go-to-market team, not based on what department did something, and then you can invest dollars and resources to create those signals. Some marketing investments, some you're just buying data, other things other teams, your VP of sales might just give you a list of people to call, which is generally not a very productive thing to do. And looking at it as these are investments in departments and how do we make them work together, I think signals really gets there, and it gets you out of the inbound outbound conversation, just looking at here all the things buyers do, what are the things that work and what don't.
Love that.
Dustin, does this reaffirm everything you've ever thought about marketing or what?
Yeah. No, as I was going through a lot of your content, Chris, that's really what resonated with me is I feel like a lot of people they put so many silos on, and that, the inbound, outbound, I felt like there's going to be some red meat there because
it comes up a lot. And trust me, like 3 years ago, I popularized some of the stuff that I like. I love my position changing. It means you're evolving. It means you're learning new things. It means you're talking to people that are smarter than you. It means you're trying stuff and it used to work, but now things in the market have changed and you have to be able to change your perspective. And I think that some people struggle with saying that, some of the things I said 3 years ago aren't right anymore, or my position has evolved. And I feel very comfortable saying those things because it means you're learning stuff.
So true. So Chris, to dive a little bit deeper, you got a lot of stuff going on, right? From podcasts to different businesses, and these aren't passive businesses, right? These are all scaling businesses taking on big problems in unique ways. Can you share a little bit about maybe just a couple things you've learned from a productivity perspective of just how you tackle it all in a day?
Yeah, I'm happy to share some of the things that I'm by no means an expert in this field, but I'll share some of the things that have been working for me, and I'll try and almost prioritize them in the amount of impact that they've had for my perception of the impact. I think that the number one most impactful thing for me in terms of productivity is waking up every morning at the same time and going to the gym 7 days a week. No matter what day it is. Some people are like, oh, you need a day off. It's like, no, you need a day off. I don't. I make
Love that.
And it's not even about whether you're sore or not. Sometimes I don't get sore in the gym. It's the act of getting up at the same time, putting wins on the board for yourself every morning, using that as a fuel for energy instead of drinking a bunch of caffeine or stuff like that. That's been a massive mover for me, that I started doing that in, 2 months after I started my first company, Redefine Labs. So that has been a catalyst all the way through, and I still do it today. 7 days a week, every day. I'm on vacation, I'm somewhere else, I always get it in. That one's been really big for me. This is a relatively new one, but even in a short period of time has been so impactful for me, is that I don't drink alcohol anymore. And I don't know if that's going to remain consistent forever. It's almost surprising to me, because I didn't really did nothing bad happened or nothing. It's just January 11th, I just stopped drinking alcohol, and now I get a soda water with lime when I go somewhere, and I feel better the next morning. I have more energy. I sleep better. I wear this thing on my arm called a Whoop, which will be my third one, that tells me about how bad alcohol is for me and how good not doing it is. So that one's been, only 2-month time frame, but it's been working for me so far, and it's something I'm going to probably continue. I've worn this band for over 4 years, a Whoop band. Some of the stats you can get from an Apple Watch and Oura Ring. I'm not saying buy the Whoop. You can choose whatever brand to get the data that you want, but I do think the Whoop is great. And it basically, I'm able to understand my sleep cycles, my energy levels, how much I'm exercising, what my sleep need is every day based on how much stress I take in. What parts of I've worn this for 4 years now, so I have tons of data. I know that in the winter, my ability to handle stress declines. And in the summer, my ability to handle stress increases dramatically, almost to superhuman levels. A lot of people look at my scores in the summer and they're like, who are you? You're like there's only a couple of the best athletes in the world that get to those levels. So this thing's been hugely impactful to have the data to drive behavior change. I didn't do all the things that I do now. It's because I was able to show myself over and over that what the things that I was doing were not helping me perform better. And you can overdo that and you can get obsessed with, I'm not like that, but some people can. So just, be conscious of that. I think the next thing is making sure that you have great, committed people around you that are rallying around your mission. This could be arguably the number one thing, but I'm just sort of rattling them off as I think through them. That you're not going to be able to do anything alone. You can get somewhere, but at this point now, Redefine Labs is a 50 person organization. We work with a lot of companies. There's so many talented people that work there to a level where I'm not even needed inside of the day-to-day. And that just doesn't happen overnight. That takes a lot of time, takes hiring cycles and getting it wrong a couple times and switching out some executives and scraping your D's and making mistakes and all that stuff. But having great, committed people around you that are dedicated to the same things that you see in the world, I think are hugely impactful. I used to be more committed to this earlier than I am now, and I need to get back to it. Is that every 6 weeks I would take a solo, basically a solo retreat with myself. Sometimes I would go somewhere tropical like St. Lucia. Other times I would just drive 2 hours to a glamping site and be there, spending time journaling, reflecting, thinking about what I want, resetting my schedule, my priorities, things I think about. I think a lot of people are uncomfortable traveling by themselves. I've been doing it for a long time, and I see the ability to travel by yourself and have introspective time and then be able to travel with other people and have that social time. And I try to do both, but I would spend a lot of time doing that, which would then I would come back from that with new priorities, the clear things that I want, some measurable objectives, things I'm going to alter in my schedule. And then that process then drives a daily journaling practice that I do every morning, typically between 8:30 and 9, where I outline all the things that I'm grateful for. I have specific affirmations, things that I want to become, but haven't fully internalized in myself that I am those things. I write I am statements about the things that I'm trying to be. And doing that consistently has a massive impact. People are like, manifestation is bullshit and that type of stuff. What you think in your brain is how you perceive the world, is the results that you get. And so spending a lot of time working on your internal mind and your thoughts, I think has been really, really beneficial to me. Then I talk through tangible, measurable goals that I have, some that are huge, 20-year goals, other ones that are, I need to get these things done in the next quarter. And then based on that process, then I write down the 5 things I have to get done that day. So I remind myself about the goals that I have, the person I'm trying to be, the things that I'm grateful for, and then I go and talk through and I figure out what are the 5 most important things for me to do today. And I think that has been another huge thing in terms of productivity, because doing stuff is not the same as being productive. And I've fallen into this trap many times, where you spend 15, 18 hours a day doing things, but you're not actually moving the ball forward. You're not solving the root cause issue. You're not creating the leverage that you need to really make a move forward. And so I think taking that little bit of time daily to not get caught in, like, I wake up every morning and I got a bunch of fires in my email every morning. And it would be easy to open that and then spend my whole day fighting fires on my phone. And having the discipline to be able to manage the fires, but then also have a thought on the bigger picture, I think is an experience that comes with going through it. So those are, I'm sure there are others, but those are some of the things that have worked for me.
I love that.
That's
There's
gold.
so much in there that we're doing already, and they're just great reminders, some of which we could be all a little bit better at too. But it's good to hear that when we talk to leaders, there's a lot of consistency across the board with things like manifestation, mindset, journaling, working out, of course. Big fan of that. But Chris, before we run out of time, I feel like I've just got so many marketing questions I want to ask you. But I'll do one more. One of them, which you talk a little bit about on your website, is transitioning from lead gen to demand gen, which is something that really sticks out and resonates to me, because so many people and businesses are focused at generating leads or talking at people rather than generating demand. And one of the things that kind of harkened back to what you mentioned earlier was building a brand, even a personal brand, through video and putting yourself out there and being visible. How do you help, or how does Refine Labs help businesses go from lead gen to demand gen?
So happy to talk about this philosophically, and then I can get into some of the stuff with Refine Labs. But the core, like the first time that I saw this in practice was in 2016. I think it was a Salesforce ebook at that point. I downloaded a Salesforce ebook about how you're supposed to do B2B marketing. I'm like learning some of this stuff for the first time. So I'm like, oh, they must know. They tell me what to do, which is like make a PDF and then take that and put it on a ad. So you run an ad and you try and get someone to download the PDF, and then you put them into this. They have this complicated like nurture stream of, if they open it, then do this, and if they do this, then do this. And then once they get to the end, then you have sales call them. I was like, okay, whoever it was, I'm not sure it was Salesforce. I don't want to throw them under the bus, but it was someone like that. It was a brand like that. And then they, these people get to the end. We spend thousands of dollars on the advertising and, money making the content and buying, the workflow automation. And then the SDR is sitting at the bottom and they're like, yeah, I've made 10 calls. These people are like not responding at all. And if they do answer, they're pissed. They're like mad at me for calling them. They're like, and it doesn't, companies run that machine 100,000, 1 million times a year and get that result and don't make a single fucking change. And it's just about listening purely to what your SDRs and salespeople will have direct feedback about the conversations they're having. And those people's job is to take the path of least resistance to hit their objectives and goals. So they know, they're going to tell you. And so that little bit of feedback qualitatively and the 0 out of 10 conversion rate. And we actually had that sequence running. There was 2,000 contacts in there and none of them became a customer. And that was my first insight of this sort of gap between lead. There were issues with lead gen. At that point, I didn't even know what the solution was. And then I started to think, okay, and then I went out into the field and I was talking to our customers and our prospective customers. And what did I find? These people do not understand our solution. They do not understand how we're different than the current product that they use. They do not understand the clinical information that has objective data about why they would use this on certain patients objectively that have been large randomized clinical trials. They don't understand this stuff. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to take a sales rep that they don't trust and have the sales rep shove it down their throat in an in-person meeting, and they're rejecting it. And so what should we do instead? We should take the people that ran the studies that these people trust, because we asked them, who do you trust and listen to? Put them on webinars, have them in conferences, have them in our podcast, run ads about the content that they produce and the clinical trials they did, and teach our customer these things at scale. So that then when our salesperson is having that meeting, then they don't have to fight around the clinical data. The customer believes all those things, and our salesperson can do what they do best, which is help the customer buy the fucking product. And so that's what we did in that instance, in that case. And that was my first sort of insight in this transition from lead gen to demand gen, and the impact that it has on the entire go-to-market, not just marketing. Sales velocity increases, sales productivity, sales quota attainment, BDR quota attainment, marketing ROI, pipeline growth overall as a company. When you do this, when you fix that part and you stop having marketing spend all the dollars generating shitty leads that actually just help, they don't help the business at all. It's actually detrimental. It wastes all the other people's time in the go-to-market following up with these people that don't buy. And the data is very clear around that. And so that having that shift in perspective then had me sort of like build the initial part of Refine Labs. And so at a high level, what we do, we analyze all the places where companies are generating leads. We identify the places where there are core issues. Then we optimize their current advertising mix about how they generate leads based on tangible, measurable results. And then we help companies sort of like build on top on how do we create the demand? How do we go out to buyers that don't understand our solution, that don't understand the customers that use it, that are not in market to buy, and have a balanced investment so that we're educating people, and then more people want to buy our stuff. And because we taught them that, we're at least in the consideration set when they buy, when they actually go into a buying cycle. And the reason that all the lead gen stuff happens and still happens today in many companies is because the go-to-market metrics incentivize it. The operating model that companies use, that's what they think marketing's supposed to do. Marketing gets leads, SDRs call those leads, then sales has to close all the shitty leads that get through that process. And when you rethink and you recognize that marketing investments can create demand, capture intent, convert pipeline, and expand accounts, that marketing investments can work across the entire customer life cycle, that you realize that measuring marketing on how many leads they got is fucking stupid. And so that is the lead gen to demand gen. I will say that I love the progress that has been made. Like almost everybody is at least now educated on this distinction, which 5 years ago they weren't. But I gotta say, most companies still don't do anything about it. And I have been, I've been in this industry. I've been working in B2B companies since 2012, and as an entrepreneur, I've been involved in this for 5.5 years. And I am wildly surprised at how slow this market and the companies inside these markets move. I'm sure that the exact same thing is in B2C. They move slower on different things. But it takes, there's a lot of inertia, and there's a lot of data, and there's a lot of clear rationale about why you would do something different than lead gen. But I would say still a majority of companies still don't do it. And my conclusion, there's a handful of smart people that are going to do the best thing that makes the most sense, and those people are going to win no matter what. And then there's a large majority of people that are not going to make a change until they feel extreme pain, personal pain, or the pain inside of their company to be able to make a big change. And I feel like this time period, what we're going through right now, is starting to or has caused some significant pain, which allows people to question the things that they've historically done, and will get forced to try new things because what they are doing is clearly not achieving the result. And I think that we'll look back and say that this time period, and I think that I'll look back on this in my career as well, and look at the period from 2022 to 2024, this 3 full year period, as a hard period of time, especially to be in tech or tech marketing, tech anything. But we'll look back and say that it made some of the most impactful changes. I think that when you look back as an entrepreneur, the things where you feel the most pain, the most friction, are actually the most valuable. And sometimes it's hard to recognize it when you're in the eye of the storm, and only in hindsight, when you look out, can you say, wow, I learned some lessons there that are going to give me tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars of value over the rest of my life. It hurt in the short term. It cost me a lot of money in the short term, but 99.99999% of people don't ever even do the things to learn the lesson. And now I have the lesson. There's one more crazy, I know we're getting out on time, but there's one more crazy thing that I've learned about myself related to entrepreneurship is that there are certain things as an entrepreneur and as a business professional where everyone in front of you can be saying, this is a bad idea, don't do this, don't do this. You can read business books that are basically saying the exact same thing. And there are many instances where the only time that you really learn the lesson is to do that and then feel the fucking pain and really feel it. And that's happened to me when it comes to cash flow management and a variety of other things that have happened throughout my entrepreneurial journey. And I would encourage people to not make some of the same mistakes that I've made, to be able to learn from either me or other people, and to be able to have the knowledge. Like I'll tell a story I don't think I've told anyone before. In I think it was October of 2021, Redefine Labs was on a rapid scale trajectory. From September of 2021 to January of 2022, we went from $6 million run rate to $22 million run rate. Massive trajectory. And in the middle of that massive trajectory, one of my best friends, I've known him since high school. He's a esteemed investor and venture capitalist. And he brought me to the side and said, you better stuff your coffers. It's about to get really ugly out there. And meanwhile, I'm out here, my business is growing 100% month over month. Yeah. And I didn't listen to him. And then what happened? Q1 2022 rolls around, the bottom falls out of the market. Our customers customers that signed 3 months ago are churning left and right because they don't even have the money to pay our bill. And I paid a very large price to not just listen to what somebody that I trusted that I've known for a long time told me, because I had to learn the lesson for myself. So that's one example. I have a variety of those stories. I'm sure if we had more time or another episode, we could go through more of them, because I feel, like I said, I'm out of the eye of the storm. Now I can look back and I can really assess what were things that were truly, like, I messed up. The other things, some things are outside, like you could take the position that everything's in your control. Like some people take that position, and I like that position, but there are a variety of things that happen that you have no control over. And I think in hindsight, you're able to identify these are the places where I should have done something different, where I truly messed up as a leader and as an entrepreneur. There's other things where if just because things are going wrong or things go bad doesn't mean that you messed up. Just because Salesforce bottomed out and had their worst ever like stock performance in years in December of 2022, and that coincided with a lot of churn because companies are cutting their budgets and laying off people and things like that. It didn't mean that our company sucked. It didn't mean that our company wasn't delivering value to customers. It meant that our customers were in a really hard time. And so I think there's some reflections there where you when you're out of it, you can learn a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. It's excellent.
Amazing perspective and a great way to wrap up this conversation. I think so much of life is perspective. I happen to be one of those people that feels like you control most things. Obviously, there are things you can't control, but then you have to have the right perspective and the right mindset to not let that negatively impact you. But I digress. Chris, before we let you go, why don't you tell our audience where they can find you and a little bit more about Redefine Labs and your businesses?
Awesome. If you want to, you like the content, you want to check some of the stuff that I'm doing out, you could follow our podcast. It's the B2B Revenue Vitals podcast, available on Apple, Spotify, any other of those places. And then I produce content on LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube Shorts. So whatever sort of social network you like to consume content, feel free to follow me there. I'm most consistent on LinkedIn, but continue to experiment with those other channels as, the gold mine of LinkedIn is not as gold as it was 5 years ago. And I think a lot of people are recognizing that and starting to diversify their bets. And then when it comes to my companies, Redefine Labs is a B2B demand gen agency. We're with companies all the way from like 5 million ARR to some of the biggest companies in revenue in the world. We help them with basically demand gen planning and orchestration and reporting, creative and content production, and paid media all in one place, so that you have a partner that owns all of the key things to be accountable to the actual result, rather than having your creative agency over here that's building pretty pictures, and the media department that's just getting leads, and then you have a demand gen consultant that's over here that's trying to orchestrate everything. That having everything together under one strategy is a significantly better value prop for the customers that work with us. And then Passetto is a software as a service startup. We're a software startup focused on helping companies optimize and measure their entire go-to-market holistically. This is not an attribution solution. I want to make that very clear to people. That is not what I'm interested in. Helping executives see at a macro level what are the right KPIs we should measure, how do we monitor the performance of that, how do we use that performance to diagnose issues, and then how do we use that to forecast and plan in the future. And so that is what our software company, Passetto, is working on. Early stage company, started 3 months ago. So as many people are, looking at me, like some people have questions in the comments like, oh, Passetto is a software company. I had no idea. And they kind of say it in a dickish way, if I'm being honest. And it's like, well, we started the company 2 months ago and we're bootstrapping the company and not raising money. So just give it a little bit of time for the vision to play out. How about that? That if you bootstrap a company and you don't want to have handcuffs to VCs and VC money for the rest of the time, that maybe you have to sell a blend of product and services for a little while as you build the cash flow and you build a product that is sticky. And so I think that people just give it some time to play out. And people will see, a lot of people compare Redefine Labs and Passetto, see them as a competitive situation. Like, I would never do that. I'm a major shareholder in Redefine Labs. It makes absolutely no sense for me to do that. And so I think just for the people listening that actually like believe in the things that I'm doing and listen to me constantly, I think just my message would be, give it a little bit of time for the vision to play out so that you see what we're really working on. We have 3 people working here. My number one priority is not fixing our website. And so like the stuff. Yeah. So that's where we're at. I digress, but if you want to follow me, LinkedIn, TikTok, podcast, those are some of the places.
I can say firsthand, you've been in my news feed for a long period of time on multiple platforms. And as someone who's been in the marketing industry for a long time, there are very few outlets and people that I listen to, because most people will just tell you to follow the latest trend. But your content is some of the best content that I see. And it's because you've done it before, and it's stuff that actually works. So I
continue to do it. I think that's a really key point. Like, there's a lot of people that have done it before and did it in 2010, and they still talk about what they did in 2010 as if it's the best thing to do now. I've had times like I stopped working with. I don't know, we want to stop the podcast, but I'm on a roll. I stopped working with customers at Redefine Labs where we were about 50 employees, and it very quickly became disconnected from the work and what customers cared about and not. And so it's not only about have been there before, it's about always doing it. How quickly, if you don't play basketball, are you going to suck at playing basketball and get beat by other people? It's actually about keeping doing it. People see the holy grail of like, oh, I want to be an executive so I don't have to do this stuff anymore. And that's like the beginning of the end of you becoming irrelevant, is when you get out of the work and the process. So I think people listen to me because I continue to do it. And because I continue to do it, I have real insights that they feel because I'm in there doing it with them. Really appreciate you
being a student of the game.
Yeah, appreciate you following along and listening and the kind words. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, as I'm looking at your YouTube channel right now, 630 videos says enough right there. And that's not accounting all the other platforms and all the other stuff you've produced with podcasts and that. So, folks, if you heard it right now, check him out. Follow, subscribe, download. He is the real deal. Chris, thank you so much for being on the show. To all the listeners, thanks for your ears. Until next time, peace.